Hello and welcome back to Refining Rhetoric podcast. I'm your host, Robert Bortons. I'm so excited to be jumping in with Mark Hancock, the CEO of Trail Life USA. He is also a classical conversations dad, and he tells us about how Trail Life USA is transforming lives in men and boys. So you won't want to miss this episode. Of course, we'll practice the 15 tools of learning and then wrap up with our segment on crypto. So let's jump in.
Classical Conversation Studios presents Refining Rhetoric with CEO Robert Bortons, a podcast where faith, business, politics, and classical education meet. Join us as we use the classical tools of rhetoric to seek truth in every arena of life.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Refining Rhetoric. Today, my guest is Mark Hancock. Mark is the CEO of Trail Life USA, a Christ-centered program for young boys that emphasizes and teaches biblical values through outdoor adventure, character, and leadership development. Mark is also a speaker and author of the book, Why Are We Sitting Here Until We Die? And 2 booklets, Let Boys Be Boys, 3 Winning Strategies for Leadership for Boys, and 5 Critical Needs for Boys. After starting his career by founding and running an advertising agency for 15 years, Mark transitioned into ministry, serving in a variety of pastoral and directorial roles before joining Trail Life. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Robert. It's great to be here.
Mark, this podcast is about seeking truth in every area of life, and I think that's probably one of the reasons you started Trail Life. But how do you define truth?
You know, you told me before the broadcast that's the first question. I thought, wow, he starts out right out of the box with a tough one. And in our culture today, this is a difficult thing, but it's good to ponder. And I would say that what emanates from God and from His Word is probably what I would define most as truth, because it's unchanging and it's absolute. And out of that, we draw our moral law and base our morality. And so when you're thinking in terms of your morality, you've got to base it on something that doesn't move, and that's the unchanging nature of God. So somewhere in there is the answer where truth is. It's something that emanates from God that allows us to build our lives on a solid moral law.
That's wonderful. I love it. The unchanging nature of God is, I think, what at least myself for all my kids, but 2 of them are boys, is something that I want them to aspire to know and to make known. And part of that for our oldest, because our youngest isn't old enough to join yet, Trey, is being part of Trail Life USA. So tell me all about this organization and its mission, values, and how it got started.
Yeah, I'd love to. Trail Life USA is a Christ-centered, boy-focused character leadership and adventure organization for boys from kindergarten age all the way up to 12th grade. And we're in all 50 states, have about 50,000 members, working out of about 1,000 churches. And it's what you'd expect from an outdoor boys adventure program. We have patrols and uniforms and hiking and camping and all that outdoor stuff. We have a robust awards program. But what's unusual about us in terms of that space is that we are unapologetically Christian, and we also boy focused. We believe that boys and girls are different, and that boys need an organization that's aimed precisely at their nature, which is different from girls. We think girls are wonderful, but boys and girls need their own organizations that are aimed at how it is that they learn and grow.
Yeah, that's great. And I know our local Trail Life has kind of like a sister organization that some of the parents started aimed at girls, I think around like American Heritage Girls or something like that. So
Yep. American Heritage Girls is a wonderful program. That's why we don't have to worry about girls. American Heritage Girls are very good friends of ours, and they have a program that's aimed at girls. Been around about 25 or 30 years, a lot longer than we have. We started in around 2013. We launched in 2014 because it appeared that the Boy Scouts were abandoning some of their traditional values. And when you talk about absolute truth, if your organization isn't built on the Word of God and the unchanging nature of God, it isn't going to last. And so we saw the Boy Scouts begin to abandon some of their values. And even though for over 100 years they'd given us astronauts and presidents and generals and senators and civic leaders, but they had this magic sauce they put together.
yeah,
But they were founded in a Christian nation, and the assumption was that they would continue to be Christian. But they've kind of lost their way, and so Trail Life was started to fill that gap.
Now, can you tell us a little bit how trail life is different than the Boy Scouts? Like, most of us know that the Scouts, I think they may even call themselves now, kind of how they started losing their way. And of course, there's still great people involved in it. But what really differentiates trail life from other outdoor adventure programs?
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, I had a homeschool mom come up to me at a homeschool convention recently. She said, "Okay, Mark, I've got a Boy Scout troop 5 minutes from my house, and I've got a Trail Life USA troop 35 minutes from my house. Tell me why I should drive that extra distance." And I said, "Well, you're already doing the hard thing. You're homeschooling your children.
Right.
Wouldn't it be a lot easier to walk them down the sidewalk and put them on a bus and be done with it?" So yes, if you're seeking, there are two things that make us very different from Boy Scouts. We are Christ centered, which means we're unapologetically Christian, and we are boy focused. And Boy Scouts is no longer either one of those things. And so if those things are important to you, then there's a huge difference. If they're not important to you, then the organizations are a lot alike. We're a little bit more modern in terms of our structure. We're more digital. We have more online tools for our leaders to use, from online training to online tracking of goals. We have online social media feed, chat groups, and things like that. All of our advancements are done online. Today, we launched this beautiful thing for our Freedom Award. The Freedom Award is the highest award in Trail Life USA. It's a map. It's an interactive map for the boys to pursue the highest award in the program. So we're more digital. We're more cutting edge. Our child and safety youth protection standards are gold standard. But some things look a lot alike. Like I said, handbooks and uniforms and hiking and patrols and focus on adventure. But the Christ-centered boy-focused thing is a huge difference.
I'm sure each of the groups has their own flavor, but I know the local group that I go to with my son, I really appreciate they spend the first 10, 15 minutes sharing the gospel and going through some Bible verses. Of course, we take the Trailman's Oath and say the Pledge of Allegiance. So, those are all skills and ideas that um, really, I think, take the kids to see that there's more to life than maybe what's in front of them, and not just having a lot of fun, but inspiring them to be more like Christ. So that's one of the things I've appreciated about what our local group does.
Yeah. Well, you hit the nail on the head. People say, yeah, that, well, I went to one troop and they did this, another troop and did this. Well, troops are like churches. Just because you've been to one doesn't mean you've been to all of them. They all have their own flavor and their own personality. There is a certain structure that we follow. The things that you're saying, the oath and the motto and the pursuit of the awards and those sorts of things, those are standardized. But because we charter in a multitude of denominations and faith traditions, each one of those troops is going to be kind of carry the personality of that local church. We're not just a group that's using the basement in the church. We are an outreach of that local church. And so each troop is going to have its own flavor based on the personality and makeup of that local church.
It's wonderful. So you talked about the map that these students can go through to achieve the Freedom Award. What are some of the things? What are some of the skills a student will learn as they go on this journey?
Yeah, well, I love that you're calling them students because it is a learning process. I have two homeschooled sons, both classically educated in CC, and we use this as part of our curriculum, this experience, because they are learning so much. Our badges are broken down into 7 frontiers, everything from citizenship to outdoor skills to personal resources, those sorts of things. Badges like Family Man. So a lot of practical stuff, and then also a lot of outdoor stuff, rope skills and camping skills and hiking skills, all those things. So there's a very broad, across 7 frontiers, a very broad curriculum, if you want to call it that, where boys are being engaged in the outdoors in a male-centric, male-focused, Christ-centered environment. And they're just learning a lot in that place. It's an environment that's designed for boys. Like I said, boys and girls are different. You mentioned the book, Let Boys Be Boys. We have a new book out called Raising Godly Boys, and you can get it for free right now at traillifeusa.com. But in there, we talk about things like the differences between boys and girls. So in that environment, boys are soaking up knowledge, and I experienced seeing that in my own boys in a way that they're not going to get in some of the more traditional settings or even in some of the homeschool settings, because they're with a group of boys, they're in the outdoors, they're physically engaged. And so there's a broad things. Values is another badge that we work on. There's a lot of faith elements in there that you wouldn't find in an organization like Boy Scouts. Our Family Man badge talks about the biblical father, the biblical husband, and biblical father. You know what it means to operate that way. So the types of stuff that they're getting is exactly the types of things that folks who are interested in seeing their boys get good information that's biblically based. That's what you're going to find there.
Yeah, that's what I've experienced in our group, and I've even learned a lot. I'm not I played a lot outdoors, but I wasn't part of any like outdoor clubs like Boy Scouts or anything growing up. So I've learned to tie a few knots myself since joining Trail Life with Trey. Like, how did you develop the curriculum? You know, have noticed a lot of those classical methods and classical ideas throughout. So how does one launch something like this from the ground up?
Yeah, well, organizationally, we had about 300 volunteers across the country who helped put everything together to get us off the ground. And what they did is they looked at other organizations that had some success in this area, and then they also brought in the biblical foundations in order that the gospel and truth is throughout the entire program. And the example we use, we call it like carrot in the carrot cake. If you get a piece of carrot cake, you're not going to get big hunks of carrot,
Sure.
but you're going to get carrot in every bite. And that's how the gospel and that's how biblical truths are infused throughout the Trail Life program. So spend a lot of time developing a curriculum for K through 12 for boys to earn these different badges that has a lot of biblical truth woven through it. We have a Christian worldview, the 6 essential concepts of Christian worldview, and they're woven throughout the entire program too. In fact, in the new handbook that comes out, as the boys are reading in the handbook, they'll see certain things highlighted and it'll point to one of those Christian worldview essentials. And so we're constantly in an environment, not big hunks of truth, but truths throughout everything that they're doing. They're being they're raised up in biblical truths. And on how you get things started on a local basis is at trailofUSA.com. You can find out how to start a troop, and just takes 5 adults in a church that has a vision for changing the next generation and raising up the next generation of godly men. And those 5 adults can go through the process of chartering the troop. And frequently they'll tell us, Robert, hey, we figure we're going to have 10 or 15 boys when we start.
Yeah.
Whatever they tell us, it's usually double or triple because boys are just coming out of the woodwork, and parents are looking for opportunities for their sons where they can be engaged with other families that have like-minded values.
Yeah, I think we have 30, well, we have a lot just in the like what 5 to 7 or 8-year-old range. I think we have over 35 children that attend every other week.
Yeah,
It's amazing and so
that's
much
wonderful.
fun. What are some of those skills that boys learn, together? Like, why is it important to get boys in a group learning these ideas instead of just maybe doing it on their own?
Yeah. Well, we talk a lot about boys and about how boys are wired differently than girls. And one of the things is they want to be part of something bigger than themselves. And in our culture today, boys are in trouble. They're twice as likely to be in special education, 3 times more likely to have ADHD. They've fallen behind girls in every single academic category. One category that they are leading in, sadly, is suicide from the age of 10 to 14 years old. Boys are like canaries in the coal mine, and they've stopped singing. The culture is really not sensitive to what boys need. And one of the things they need is to be part of something bigger than they are. That's why we can put men on boats and send them to beaches of Normandy, and they'll give their lives for that sense of purpose and brotherhood and things like that. And so in Trail Life USA, we take advantage of those desires to be part of something bigger than they are. And where boys could learn these skills on their own, they are wired to be part of a group or a troop or a pack or whatever it is. uh, they like that place and they're more prone to learn there. They love risk and competition. That's why they end up in video games.
Right.
So they love risk and competition. Video game designers do a great job of appealing to boys, and boys go there by the thousands. And then we criticize them for going there, but they're onto something. They understand that risk and competition for boys. So you don't get a lot of risk and competition on your own. So we put boys in these settings where they're learning these skills together, what's canoeing or archery or hiking or rock climbing or any sort of thing that boys work together in. And we always talk about three elements that make a successful group for boys. Is boys are constantly answering the question, who's in charge, who's with me, and what is our mission? And when we can answer those things for boys, which we do in a troop setting, it's real clearly who's in charge. The boys have a troop structure, it's a patrol structure. They elect a leader, they have a leader in that troop. They understand that. They will get in line when they understand clearly who the leader is, when they understand who's with them. And that's why we put them in patrols where we take this larger group troop and break it down into smaller patrols. So the boys are identifying with 4 or 5, 6 boys who are all part of the same patrol. They may have a patrol name, a patrol call, a patrol flag. It's because we understand we need to answer that question, who's with me? And then the final question is, what's our mission? And boys today are so purposeless in our culture today because we don't believe in them anymore. But when you can get a group of boys together and let them know who's in charge and make that clear, who's with me and make that clear, and give them a mission and make that clear, you have their hearts.
Mm.
And that's why they will engage in trail life in ways that they won't do that in a classroom or some other kind of setting where those questions aren't being answered. Because of the risk and competition, God has given them this gyroscope to keep them from just going wacky and running off of cliffs. And what it is this thing around this group sense
Yeah.
of needing to know who's in charge, who's with me, what is my mission. And so when we answer those questions, you don't have the types of behaviors that could get out of control because they want to be part of that group. They actually want to follow the rules of that group because the rules are clear, the leadership is clear, the mission is clear. And so it's a powerful setting, especially for boys, when you can get them in that troop working on some of these activities together.
Yeah, one of the things that I love is just the boys leading the troop on their own and the men being there to support them. And obviously that responsibility gets bigger as they grow older. There's no 7-year-olds planning what we do each month in our group.
Right.
I think that's, something to aspire to and something that, I've seen in my own life is when you know what the goal is, you know who you're following, and when when you're standing shoulder to shoulders with your comrades, with the other people in your troop or your team or whatever mission you're on, that team element is such a powerful thing. And I think, like you pointed out, to the wandering and the lostness of males in our society here in the United States. I think it's because we've abandoned some of those things that we know work, as our culture has evolved and thrown away our biblical roots in many sense. So
Yeah, and that's why it is really tragic when you see organizations like Boy Scouts, it has boy in their name, but they're kind of abandoning that space and understanding that boys need a place to be boys. And so we're restoring that. We're restoring biblical masculinity, and we're just seeing a lot of growth in our boys. We have a proven process, and that we actually guarantee that we guarantee that church, the boys in that troop will become godly men
mm,
through following the proven process that we talk about in Trail Life USA. And I was a youth pastor for 15 years. I couldn't have made that promise to anybody, but we are so confident in the principles that we have in place in Trail Life USA that we're actually guaranteeing our churches that the boys following our program will become godly men.
mm. I've certainly see that locally. But I know you've been involved since the beginning, so I'd love for you to share, what's one or two of your favorite stories with you and your own children in trail life and your experiences.
Well, I can tell you at the beginning, I was primary in homeschooling. My wife was running a crisis pregnancy center at that time. And so I said, I'll take the boys. And so the boys were, gosh, maybe 10 and 12 at that time. And so I was homeschooling the two boys and starting Trail Life.
Okay.
So I'm sitting at the head of the table as the boys are doing they're drawing their maps for CC, or they're working on their Latin or whatever. And one is on my left hand and one is on my right hand.
Right.
And they're getting that education there, but they're also watching an organization be built from our dining room table. And so I think that that's now they're both, one is graduated from Liberty University last year. He's in his second year of teaching at a Christian Classical Academy in Atlanta, and my youngest son is a junior at Liberty University. So that experience of seeing an organization, a Christian organization, develop in front of them, I think has affected them deeply. But I can tell you that from a dad's perspective in Trail Life, I can tell you about stories like coming home after being away for a weekend with my two sons out in the woods and hiking and getting rained on and getting dirty and all that, and coming home, my wife meeting us at the door and saying, well, first of all, you're not coming inside till you get hosed off. but then her comment that she made, she said, when you boys come home, you're dirty and you're smelly, but you're taller.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, isn't that interesting? A weekend, my boys, a weekend with men and other boys just has a tendency to have them throw their shoulders back a little bit and stand a little bit taller, because they have finally found an environment that appreciates who they are. And instead of being discounted and instead of being, it's like boyhood is some kind of social disease we're trying to eradicate or something. Instead of all that, they're being lifted up. They're being encouraged. The risk and competition, the outdoors, the activity, all of that is being celebrated rather than being labeled as being toxic. And so boys are no longer defective girls. They are boys. They are what they were built to be. And that makes them stand taller. So I love to hear my wife say that, you boys are always taller when you come home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great testimony. Now, can you tell us a little bit about your family? Said your wife was running a crisis pregnancy center and you were doing the homeschooling, which is pretty unique. Yeah, just what else did your family love to do growing up before you sent them off to college?
Yeah, well, I love that. We homeschooled them for a good part of the years, and my wife and I homeschooled them together. I had passive income. We had collected rental properties over the year. I had a small finance over the years. I had a small finance company, and so I was relatively, well, not relative. I was able to be at home a lot, and so my wife and I worked together. And then she got tapped to run a pregnancy crisis center that the director was going to be retiring. And so I said, honey, I got this. And for years, we've been in ministry, different types of ministry. I traveled around the world for a number of years, putting together conventions and conferences on 5 continents. And we've always done ministry together. It was youth pastoring or college or career pastoring or whatever. So she went off to save babies, and I stayed home to homeschool the boys, and took them to CC and worked with them on a daily basis. And then the Trail Life opportunity came along, and what it was because we were in a Boy Scout troop, our troops, the church that had charged the troops, said we can't do this anymore because of the changes the Boy Scouts are making, and that really broke our hearts.
Sure.
But we kind of got swept up in this movement of, like I said, these 300 volunteers across the country. And somehow I got invited to a meeting in Louisville, Kentucky. There were 50 men and women that came from across the country to discuss the ideas of what an alternative to the Boy Scouts would look like, a specifically Christian one. Walked out of that meeting with 9 of us on a committee, and we were charged with putting together a convention. And 68 days later, we held a convention in Nashville, Tennessee.
Wow.
Governor Mike Huckabee was our keynoter. Michael Ferris, I'm sure a name that you know, also keynoted it. And we had 1,200 men and women come from 44 states for that weekend. And then 3 months later, we launched Trail Life USA on January 1st, 2014. And I stepped off of what had become the board of directors in order to run the organization. So we've been involved from the start, and it's been quite a ride. Like I said, now coming up on 50,000 members and 1,000 churches. Pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah. Did you ever imagine that when you were having that first little meeting, what it would turn into?
I don't know what we imagined, Robert. It's like we knew it was big. My wife, I had been working towards that convention in Nashville, and my wife at the last minute was able to come up and join me in Nashville. And I thought I was going to be through after that. I thought, I'll help these guys do this conference because I had done these conferences all over the world. I kind of knew how to do this. And she came up to Nashville, and it was such a move of God and such a powerful weekend that about halfway through, she said to me, Mark, wherever this takes you, I'm with you. and
Wow.
and we didn't know, but it was so we worked the next 3 months after that convention as a volunteer just to help get the organization launched. And then I thought I was going to step off after the launch. I was going to help it get ready, and then they get a staff and they'd go. So it's been little incremental steps that God has kind of drawn us into this vision. I actually started on that January 1st as the COO because that's where my strength was, the logistics and operations and getting this stuff together. But 3 months later, the board called me in and they said, we don't want to hire a CEO. We want you. And I had to pray about that. I wasn't sure about that, but it's been a growing experience for me to move in that kind of new space as the number one guy instead of the number two guy. But it's been quite a journey. My two boys, like I said, are raised classically. Both of them went to Liberty University. One is graduated, the other's junior. He's majoring in business. And my wife and I have been married 34 years, done a ton of ministry together, and just happy to be part of the legacy that's being built in Trail Life USA.
Now, dads are doing this for their boys, but at least as I can personally attest, and even talking to the other dads in my troop, there's a lot the dads get out of it. So, talk about that relationship that you've seen between men and their sons as they take part in the Trail Life troops.
Oh, goodness. Robert, there's so much there to say that the fathers and sons, dads are looking for ways to connect with their sons, and it's hard because it's not like it was. I mean, it's like Google is the new
Yeah,
parent. Parents, yeah, and in so many ways, especially young teens are going to feel like they are better educated than their parents because they're able to stay on top of this digital advance and everything else that we're doing. But the outdoors is this great level playing field. I mean, you can Google how to start a fire with wet leaves, but until you've seen a guy do it,
mm,
um, so the boy gets to experience his dad in a whole new way, and the dad gets to be kind of the expert again, and so that helps set up that relationship. And then remember, you're also away from a weekend or a week or however long you're away, and you're with other dads and their sons. And so the boys bed down and the dads are sitting around the fire and they're asking questions like, hey, I saw the way that you talk to your son. How did you build such a good relationship with him? I'd like to have that kind of relationship with my son. So it's iron sharpening iron. One of the best kept secrets is we're also a ministry to men. The men that are in our organization are finding a real brotherhood there. We don't do so well sitting across from each other with a cup of coffee, sharing our hearts. But you put a fire in front of us and you're side by side, or you're hiking a trail side by side, or you're turning a wrench side by side, or you're leading a group of boys, and you tend to open up a little bit. And so men are finding real deep friendships that they haven't been able to find through their church connections. Because Sunday morning, how you doing? Doing great. How are you? You going to the game? No. These are deeper relationships that men are building in the outdoors, and they're not focused on the relationship because that scares us a little bit as
sure.
men, but they're focused on the next generation. But in sharing that larger vision, men are finding the purpose, finding the place, feeling good enough about themselves to open up to each other. And also, we're amazing ministry to boys without dads. We have a lot of men in our program who don't have sons in the troop, and they're there because they want to pour into that next generation. And we call them dad likes. And so a lot of single moms, I mean, they've cried out to God to say, I need a male influence for my son, but I don't want a boyfriend.
Yeah.
I want somebody who can speak in his life, who can take him outdoors. And so we provide that opportunity in a male centric setting. We had a mom in Virginia come up to me after an event, and she said, I need to thank you. She said, 10 years ago, my husband died and left me with a 2-year-old son. And she said, now he's 12 years old. He's a navigator in Trail Life USA. He's surrounded by godly men, and my husband will want me to thank you. I'm like, man, that's gold right there. So we had a boy just not too long ago. He got the highest award, the Freedom Award, and he stood in front of that troop and he said, I want to thank the men in this troop. You taught me how to shave and how to love Jesus. I thought,
Yeah.
man, we nailed it. So, and he had a single mom, so he didn't have a dad at home to teach him those things. So a number of things: the ministry that the boys are getting, one to each other, the ministry the men are getting side by side, the ministry that the boys without dads are getting from these men who are looking for a generation to pour into. So we get a lot of really good God stuff happening in Trail Life.
Well, personal testimony is I'd encourage everyone to find their local Trail Life USA if you have boys, and get involved because it's been transformational for my son and I, and it's just been a wonderful experience. So, Mark, just thank you so much for taking yourself out on a limb and trying to start something new when you saw something crumbling, and really it's been a pleasure to watch Trail Life grow over all of these years. So I know you mentioned a few websites and a few books, so can you just let our audience know one last time where they can connect with you and the Trail Life community?
Love to. traillifeusa.com. Trail Life USA has two L's in the middle. And there you'll find a Get Connected tab, and there's a map of the United States. You can put in your zip code and find out where the closest troops are, and click on that, and you can send them a message or ask them a question. And also, if you don't have a troop nearby, you can click on the Start a Troop, and it'll show you how you get that troop up and running. Right now on our website, free download digital book, Raising Godly Boys. Talks about the proven process for turning boys into godly men that we use in Trail Life USA, that you could use really in any organization that's reaching out to boys that wants to make that kind of a difference. And also, look for our podcast or download our podcast, Raising Godly Boys. It's a 1 minute thing. We're on 1,000 radio stations with a 1 minute broadcast, and we've turned that into a podcast. So you can just get a 1 minute, just a little tidbit every day from Raising Godly Boys, wherever you find your podcasts, and encourage you to subscribe to that.
I love it. Thank you so much, Mark, for coming on today, and it's been a blast.
Thank you for what you're doing at CC. Appreciate you guys.
All right, now we're going to practice the 15 tools of learning together. And today we have a very sad article from CBS News that's from a CDC survey that says nearly a third of teen girls say they have seriously considered suicide. Of course, there's a number 988. That's the U.S. Suicide and Crisis Lifeline that you can call. Of course, you go see, if you have a local support in your church, it's also a great place to reach out. But they said around 1 in 3 high school girls in the U.S. have seriously considered attempting suicide, and 57% report feeling persistently sad or hopeless, a record number high. Of course, they're blaming the COVID policies on this, but I would like to think that that's really not the case. For us, I think as Christians, the first thing that we do in this podcast is define truth and knowing the appropriate word. And the world has rejected truth. They don't even believe truth exists anymore. And so when our mind and our body are not even oriented towards the ideas that we were designed for, I believe that that's going to cause serious issues in society. We definitely want to look at comparison, discover the similarities first, and then the differences. So this is up, they said in 2011, about 13% of girls had seriously considered attempting suicide. So that number has increased dramatically over the last decade. Of course, very sad, but it shouldn't be surprising to those of us who recognize that young people are definitely susceptible to the life around them. And when educational systems are saying that life is purposeless, there's nothing that you can get out of it, we're all just randomly here, you'll just randomly go away one day, that is not a life that is going to be fulfilling to most people. And so, from memory and the 5 canons of rhetoric, the flooding of words and sensory stimulus associated with an idea, and I think we should all go back and remember, what was it like 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, or 50 years ago in the United States when we had and thought that there was truth in our education system, probably truth that you and I might disagree with, but we had a true north that we were pointing to as a society. And since we've lost that, these tragic numbers have continued to get worse and worse. And so We need to pursue truth, beauty, and goodness. We can do that through a Christian classical education. And not that that's a cure-all for all of life's problems, but when we have truth to look forward to, that can get us through these hard times. So, but we do have hope, and that's hope in Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, who came to save us from our sins and to bring us to heaven to celebrate forever. So we need to change our education system, and that's why I'm so passionate about my work at Classical Conversations. So let's help turn this number around by pursuing truth in every avenue of life. I'm super excited about this year's Parent Practicum. So if you're ready to take your homeschool to the next level, join us for Practicum 2023. If you don't know, Parent Practicums are local Classical Conversations conferences where parents come together to learn how to use the techniques from the classical model of education in their own homeschooling. So, whether you're a new parent, have years of homeschooling experience under your belt, or just interested in learning more about it, you are invited to attend a practicum in your area. This summer, we'll be practicing the 5 common topics of dialectic, a set of classical tools that enable us as parents to have rich conversation with our students about any subject. You'll recognize those because we practice our 15 set of tools here on this podcast, and we're always pulling from one of those 5 in the dialectic. During our summer events, you can practice these tools with other parents by exploring the history of the worldwide salt trade together in a small group discussion. All in all, you'll come away from Practicum encouraged and equipped to help your students understand any unfamiliar subject. Registration for 2023 Practicum is now open. Just visit ccpracticum.com to find an event near you. Again, that website is the 2 letters ccpracticum.com. We'll see you there. Now let's talk a little bit of classical crypto. I'm talking today about how you can really influence the future of the crypto space with an example of something that I've been involved in now for over a year. One of the coins that I've invested in, and this is not by any means financial advice. Talk to your financial advisor. I did stay at a Holiday Inn once, but that's about as close as I'm going to get to that. But I'm just using this for illustration, and it's a coin called Cosmos, and the symbol is Atom, ATOM, and it's about connecting other blockchains. And so an app written on Ethereum only talks to other things on Ethereum. And so if you want to use XRP or Bitcoin or one of these other layer ones, then there's no way for them to talk to each other. And so Cosmos is going to solve that problem, or at least that's what they are working on solving, is interconnecting all of these layer ones. And so part of their platform is an opportunity to be part of governance. And governance is where you literally get to vote on what's going on, what they're going to develop, how they're going to spend their resources in the future. And so it's kind of like voting your shares. So if you think about, the tool of comparison, voting your shares of stock, you can kind of vote on who's going to be in the board. And the board usually has, 3 to 5 things that you can vote on. And you can say yay or nay. And based on the number of shares you have, it passes or fails. Well, the same thing happens with crypto, but it's a lot more intimate. You get to vote on a lot more proposals. They have message boards, they have websites, they have engagement on Twitter and Discords where you can talk to the developers, you can talk to the leaders of the project. One of the things that I got to vote on in the hype of the bull market, they wanted more people to know about their product. And so one of the things they wanted to do was vote on spending $3 million on marketing and advertising for this tool that they're developing. And so, I got to engage, like I said, on the different ways, different platforms with them and say, okay, well, how are we going to spend the money? What type of channels? And so people do different proposals, and eventually one of the proposals gets officially submitted. And then if you have tokens, you can go and vote your tokens and either help pass or stop it from passing if you don't like it. And it's really fun to get involved that way. Of course, you can really go down the crypto hole and spend a lot of time in it. And, from different seasons of life, I've spent more time than others. Haven't voted on something in quite some time. There's right now 3 different voting ideas right now: interchain information funding, V9 Lambda, and a Spacebox, a tool for chain indexing. So I don't really know what those are at the moment, but if I wanted to, I could go learn more and then decide whether to vote or not on it. So it seems like about 80% of the things that get proposed officially ended up passing, but sometimes they get rejected. So it's just a really interesting look at democracy and a chance to just see how that works in a space. So definitely check it out. It's a way to really dig deeper into the crypto space, is to vote your shares and learn more about governance of your favorite coin. And I just, in 5 minutes or so, we can't cover that much in our episodes, but we really just want to whet your appetite. And hopefully today, if you do have a coin, go find out about governance and how you can help shape the future of crypto. Thanks for tuning in to today's Classical Crypto. Until next time, keep learning, my friends. Wow, I really love talking to Mark today and hearing some of those stories and just his testimony of faith in starting an organization from scratch. And it's a great lesson in just following the path that the Lord would have set before us. So if you like this episode, please share it with a friend, and be sure to check in next time.
Thank you for listening to Refining Rhetoric with Robert Bortons. Want more? Make sure to subscribe so you won't miss an episode. You can also follow us on social media to continue the conversation, and visit classicalconversations.com/rhetoric to find out how you can join a local homeschool community.